So what I want to do is start kind of expanding your idea of pranayama. And I'll do that in the big talk. But for now, what I want to kind of put out there is a couple of things. One, that in Tantra, the idea is that we're always in the mode of expanding our consciousness. We're expanding our awareness. We're expanding our capacity. We're expanding our idea of who we are. We're always constantly growing, and I think it's kind of very symbolic or congruent with what the universe is actually doing. What is the universe doing? It's literally expanding. The universe is constantly expanding. And so if we, in Tantra, accept the fact or believe in the truism that we are the universe made manifest, then we are also expanding. And this is the idea, the central idea of Tantra. When we start to play life small, then we start to contract. We're no longer expanding. And so we're constantly in the mode of expanding our sense of who we are. And stepping and experimenting with that. And it is constantly experimenting. I can speak so much to that in how, in my own journey, a lot of times I start to forget my capacity. And so I need to remind myself of my own capacity and what I can do. And there's different ways that I do that, but it is a constant process. It never stops, from 26 to 48. I'm guessing ages. I'm not looking at you, Leslie. But we're constantly need to expand our idea of who we are. And this is the boon of pranayama. This is the real practice of pranayama. So before I start talking and then go down that rabbit hole of pranayama too much, I want to come to today's conversation, which is, for most of you, is a recap, but some of you might have forgotten, about why do we practice asana. And I actually think that in the sutras, the way that Patanjali sets up the idea of asana is actually like phase one, if you want to call it, or stage one of pranayama. It's really, truly this idea of expanding our capacity, expanding our idea of who we are, the way that he instructs us to practice it. And for those of you who haven't studied so much with me, we're not going to be getting a lot into the sutras in this training. Janice, you will be a lot more. There's a whole sutra section for you, so you're going to be getting a lot of sutras. But for the rest of you, we're not going to be really talking about the sutras as a specific separate teaching in this training, although Karina and I will be talking about it. I will be referring to the sutras in my prana talk. This afternoon, Karina's going to go through the causes of suffering with you guys, which is sutras, 2.1 to 2.6, I think. So you guys are going to get it. But the sutras, as a reminder, is really a practice in how to start to affect our minds. It's not a manual on the body. It's not a manual necessarily in dealing with the body. It's really a manual in how to lessen the afflictions, lessen the suffering in our minds. It starts off right away saying that we have this incredible capacity to do whatever we want in life. And that the nature of mind is luminosity. That each of us are endowed with this luminous mind. but then we kind of get messed up along the way very quickly. And, we can discuss whether or not that is just upbringing, whether it's environment, whether it's our parents that mess us up. Angela, I hope you're saving up for your children's therapy fund. I can't hear her. It's okay. But I always remember one of my best friends, Annette, her name is Annette, and she is like one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Like, she's so clear in her communication. She's very safe to talk to, but she's also very clear, and it's that clarity that emits this real authenticity and truism about her. And I said, oh my God, one day I said to her, oh my God, your kids are so lucky to have you as a mother. Like, they're going to turn out to be these amazing people. And she said, no, I'm already starting to save for their therapy fund. Because I know whatever I'm going to do is going to mess them up. I just accept that out of the gate. And so whatever is going to happen to us, we're going to start to have things happening in our mind. And whether it's from parents or karma related or whatever, things happen. High school. And so the sutras is a manual in how to deal with those things, but also how to return to that inner luminosity. And that's kind of what he starts off with, like right out of the gate. Like, we're perfect when we're born. We're endowed with this luminous mind. Unfortunately, things get messed up along the way, and so then he gives practices. And what we see in Sutra 246 is this practice that he introduces this idea of asana. It just kind of something to put a pin in, and this is going to just put a pin in for this afternoon's talk with Karina, that this afternoon we're going to get into what are the kleshas. And it will be a little bit of a recap for some of you, but I've asked Karina to give this teaching because then you guys will hear it from a different perspective and hear new language put to it. For those of you who remember that long talk on the causes of suffering. But in Sutra 246, he says, by practicing asana, we can actually start to reduce the pairs of opposites. We can start to reduce these afflictions if we practice asana correctly. So in Sutra 246, he gives the definition of asana. And Janice, just so that you know, I think it's on page 8, 7, 8, or 9, maybe 6, 7, 8 in your teacher training manual. I don't remember exactly. But you'll see there's actually, the kleshas are there. It's the Heart of Yoga workbook. But what he says, that he defines asana as stira sukha asana. Stira means steady and still. That in order to practice asana, we need to get still. Sukha means many things. Joy, there's a sense of ease or easiness, of softness, of effortlessness. One of the things that Karina and I will say to you guys sometimes when you're in asana is, are you being effortless? Like, loosen the effort. That's right out of the sutras. To practice loosening effort, like we approach so much in life with this kind of like, I have to do this. But what Patanjali is saying is actually back off from it. Be steady, but don't try so hard. Let go of trying. And then asana, and I want to put this idea strongly in your mind. We often define asana as pose, but it really means seat. It really means seat. Because what are we doing? Well, we're introduced to the idea of asana in the 8-limb path of yoga, and the final limb is samadhi. So we're really setting ourselves up for meditation. I find it really interesting, like when I was back teaching in my studio in New York, and I remember giving this talk to my guys one day. We were on a retreat in New Mexico, actually. At the Bodhi, I think the Bodhi Zen. And I asked them one day, I said, we all, the common wisdom is that everybody does asana. Like if you ask an Ashtangi, like, why do you practice so much? Well, I want to meditate, to prepare for meditation. Well, really? How often do you meditate every month? Maybe once every 2 months. So you spend all this time preparing for meditation, preparing for something that you never actually do. So asana literally means seat. And so what he's saying is that as we come to our seat, or as we come to our pose, that we practice steadiness, stillness, and then we get soft and effortless, and that we become still. Just something to put a pin in the morning in this training, I put in the practice of kaya sthira. And that is one of the ways to start practicing this idea of sthira, is just literally, okay, for the next minute, I'm not going to move. Just really dedicating yourself to that. It was interesting, not this last Saturday, the Saturday before, I was doing the online training and teaching them the meditation, like all of them, moving around, fidgeting the whole practice. And I finally said, okay guys, we're going to practice kaya sthira. And as soon as they made that willful determination to not move, the whole practice started shifting. There's a reason for that, by the way, that you'll find that you'll be at this place in your practice sometimes where you're really calm, the breath rate is calm, you're really relaxed, and then all of a sudden you'll move, and what starts to change is the breath. And as soon as the breath changes, the movement in the mind changes. The link between the breath and mind is parallel. Notice that. You'll move a little bit, and then your breath rate will start to change. So I would always say, if you're going to move, try not to change your breath. It's almost difficult to do, but try that. So just pay attention to that. So the other thing I wanted to say before we move on from the sutra is sukha. And by the way, our cat's name is Sukha. Yes, she loves joining people for breakfast. And sukha, the word su means good, and ka means space. So the actual translation of sukha means good space. What is the opposite of sukha? Dukkha, which means, du means bad, so it means bad space. And in the sutras, we find this word dukkha pop up. And dukkha means pain, suffering. So what Patanjali is saying is that what we want to do is get rid of anything in our space, that we want our space to be clear. And I think the important thing is that we understand that it's anything in our space. Sometimes we're like drawn to good fantasies, for example. But even those good fantasies lead us to some sort of suffering. Because there's this clinginess. If it's in our mind, it's this clinginess to those good memories that are past and gone, and ultimately will never be repeated again. Or it's this clinging to a future that hasn't happened. So what he's saying is that anything that's in our space is ultimately going to lead us to suffering. So we want to clear our space. Then I'm going to jump ahead for a second and just talk about Sutra 248. Sutra 248 says that when you've mastered asana, that all the pairs of opposites cease to have any effect. That the pairs of opposites he's referring to is this idea of pain and pleasure. And it's actually a link. You'll hear Karina talk a little bit about pain and pleasure in the sutras today. Sorry, in the kleshas from the sutras. And so this is the link. And this is sometimes why I love joining these teachings together and put these teachings side by side, because there's not much that you can do in your yoga classes to change people's lives except asana and pranayama. You don't have the ability to say, okay, next yoga class is going to be 3 hours. We're going to do 30 minutes of some movement. We're going to do 45 minutes of pranayama. We're going to do a 30-minute relaxation practice followed by an hour of meditation. You just don't have luxury. You're barely lucky at some yoga classes if you can get an hour. I've heard rumors that some yoga classes are 45 minutes. You don't have a lot of time. But what you do have is the ability to start teaching people something about this tradition, which is what we're going to start hopefully to expound upon in this 300-hour. And then get them to do something so that they can move inward and experience that place inside where the pairs of opposites cease to have any effect. That they're not being pulled by pain and pleasure for at least that moment of time, and hopefully they can start to create a sense of remembrance through the repetition of having that taste of being still inside. So what Patanjali is saying ultimately in 248, and this is, I think, the real gift of asana that doesn't get played up enough, that we're no longer disturbed. We're not leaving the yoga class in balance, chasing after things that really we're not interested in. If we really do some deep vicharya, where we're never interested in the first place, and not running away from the things that we're trying to avoid in life. That we're not, this tug of war in our mind has at least stopped for a short moment of time. But ultimately, the charge that I always give you, the student, becoming teachers, and of course now that you're teachers, becoming more advanced teachers, is to always have in your mind the bar that we're setting is that you're going out in the world and you're that's not the right word. You're holding the space for people to become really steady so that they're not being disturbed in life, that the disturbances start to become minimized. And when people are able to live in that space, and you know this already, that your sense of purpose, intention, becomes so clear, so much clearer in your life, that you're not making decisions based out of fear. You're not making decisions based upon trying to have more things in your life, or a bigger house, or a faster car, or all of those things. But your decisions are more based from your heart, and they're more heart-centered. So that's the bar that I'm setting for you guys. Janice is like, oh crap, what did I get into? Don't worry, Janice, you need to talk to Leslie. You'll be fine. So that's the bar that we're setting. And so how do we do this? Well, Sutra 247. In Sutra 247, he says how to practice asana. And this way of practicing asana, for me, is the link to pranayama. is the link, and it will become clear. If it doesn't become clear in this talk, it will definitely become clear at the end of the practice. But the link is in how to practice asana. He says by meditation on the infinite and the loosening of effort. By meditation on the infinite and the loosening of effort. And I'm just kind of curious, Emma, do you remember this talk at all in your training?
Yeah? Or at least I remember the Sukha Dukkha parts.
The Sukha Dukkha part. I was just curious because it's been, I think, 4 years, so a little over. I know Kaylee did this and Leslie did this with me a year ago. Do you guys remember this talk? Yeah? Leslie, maybe? A little bit. And of course, Kathy just did it with me. You remember it. I'm doing the speeded version of it. In the 200 hour, I kind of space it out a little bit more. But by the meditation on the infinite, the word that Patanjali uses to describe the infinite, what do you think that Patanjali is talking about when he says meditation on the infinite?
Endless possibility.
Endless possibility? Okay. Brahman. Brahma. You guys have any ideas? Want to pipe in? No? Okay. So what he's really referring to is God. And the word that Patanjali uses to depict God here is a very skillful word. The word is ananta. Ananta means infinite. And it's kind of cool because, well, I think it's cool. You may not think it's cool, but I think it's cool that he chose Ananta. Because Ananta is a snake. In the Hindu mythology, we see that Ananta is a snake. And where do we see the snake come up in our tradition? Kundalini Yoga. So there's this reference to awakening our serpent, or awakening our, lost my ability to speak for a second. There's this reference to awakening our unlimited potential within us. This dormant potential within us that we can start to access by practicing asana. Just to kind of digress for just a second here, that the reason why I said Patanjali used the word Ananta brilliantly to describe God was because so many people, much like today actually, 2,500 years ago, a lot of people had problems with religion just as much as they do today. You know, it's like, I don't want a religion, or I want to believe in that God, or I want to believe in this philosophy. So nothing's changed in 2,500 years. You're not that special. Sorry. And I think that he chose this word infinite because some of us have either through our because we're runaway Catholics, that we have a problem with religion inherently, or we just don't want to believe in, that God. But all of us can grasp this idea of infinity. We can all meditate on infinity to some degree. And that's why he chose this word infinite, by meditation on the infinite. And here's one of the links to pranayama as well, is that one of the ways to generate prana, to manifest more prana, is actually meditation on, or contemplation on the infinite, on infinity, to actually contemplate on infinite space. It's one of the most powerful ways to generate prana, to restore yourself. What do you guys like to do when you come to Blue Osa. Janice, you'll be doing this soon. You like to go to the beach. You like to look out at the ocean. Leslie, am I tempting you? You like to go to the beach. You like to look out at the ocean. You like to look up at the sky and let your mind wander. And you come back grounded, refreshed, more clear-headed. So one of the ways to build prana is actually to meditate or to contemplate on infinite space. So how do we do this practice? Like, I've kind of given it. It sounds simple. Meditate on infinite and loosen the effort. And so this great sage Vyasa came along around 500 AD, more or less, 300, 500 AD, and gave us this beautiful bhavana to practice Sutra 247. And it's a really simple statement. It's an easy statement. It's one that you can repeat. I sometimes call it a bhavana. A bhavana is also, I think, sometimes synonymous with affirmation, so it's kind of an affirmation. But sometimes I'll also call it a mantra. So it's all of those things. But bhavana, remember that bhavana means this feeling, this cultivation of an inner feeling inside of you. Sorry? And this, so the bhavana is the statement is, my mind is empty. My mind is empty. My body is like the vast expanse of sky. My mind is empty. My body is like the vast expanse of sky. This idea of embodying the infinite and mentally merging yourself with the infinite. When I say infinite, I'm not necessarily speaking of God right now, this idea of God. I'm literally saying the infinite or the infinite potential of the universe, this idea of merging your mind with this expanding infinite nature of universe is one of the fastest ways that I know of to get still, to come back home within yourself, but also to step out of yourself. There's a class that I might teach you. It's that I kind of teach this practice. I don't remember if I'm teaching it to you guys actually. But sometimes I do in this curriculum. But when I moved to New York, I moved to New York with nothing, except my wits. I don't know, I just had this huge pull to go to New York, and I had a few people in my small circle that were like, Aaron, just do it. It's going to work out. Don't worry. They just kept nudging me. I had this wonderful life that I could go back to, but I knew in my heart that that wonderful life wasn't part of my dharma. And when I went to New York, I had nothing. I knew no one. That's sort of a part lie. I knew one person, the person I lived with, and I shared the apartment with. We worked together a year before that on the cruise ships. So I had one connection, but that was it. I knew nobody. I couldn't get referrals from anybody. I couldn't get any direction. I just had my own wits. And there was a part of me that was scared, really scared. But one of the ways that I tuned into this teaching without knowing that I had tuned into this teaching, and I came up with my own affirmation, which was, I am opening myself up to the universe of limitless possibilities. I am opening, or sometimes I use infinite. I am opening myself up to the universe of infinite possibilities. The nature of our minds, because of the samskaras that we have, is to become small. We live in a box. And this particular practice, the real potential of what asana can do is start to move us out of that box and live outside that box. And so one of the other bars to set, or one of the bars to set for yourself at the very least, if not you as a teacher in instructing students, is if your practice isn't moving you outside of your box, check in with how you're practicing asana. If you're not moving outside of your box, and I don't mean necessarily doing scorpion pose or Pinchamayurasana. It's great to do that, and those are definitely for sure ways to get people out of their box, but it's really more of a mental thing. And Patanjali is saying, like, when we can start to get out of ourselves, get out of our own way, we actually then no longer are affected by these pairs of opposites. The pairs of opposites cease to have any effect. And also, I would also say, and this is the little tie-in to our big Prana week coming up, is that until we get out of the box, we can never truly embrace or realize the practices of pranayama. That it will never, that teaching, that video will never really open up for us. It's no coincidence that Patanjali put asana before pranayama. He said you need to open up to that universe of infinite possibilities. The other side of that, of course, is a busy mind, pulling us inward. Pulling us down, pulling us back into our box. And so until that we can truly master asana, and I'm not talking about mastering triangle pose. It's nice if you do. But until we can start to get still, to loosen the effort, then we can't really progress to pranayama. And I'm not referring to a physical thing, I'm referring, of course, to a mental thing. This is a teaching about the mind. It's not really a teaching about your body. For the sutras. Yes, Emma?
So, going back for just a moment, when you say, like, my mind is empty, my body is the vast expanse of sky, it's not so much talking about the AYAMA kosha. It's talking about your Pranayama here, Pranayama, and the parts of yourself that aren't tied to this physical form.
Definitely the way that we practice. So let me repeat that question for the people, for the video, is this teaching, my mind is empty, my body is like the vast expanse of sky, isn't so much referring to the Annamaya kosha, is it referring more to the Pranamaya kosha and the Manomaya kosha, the level of, is it referring more to the energetic body and then to the level of mind? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, in many ways, yeah, it's tapping into the energetic body. People that are constantly fidgeting or constantly moving, it's not a physical condition unless they're epileptic or something like that, unless there's something like that going on. It's not a physical thing, it's a mental and energetic thing. And so what we need to do is address that in the energetic body and that in the level of mind. So if we can get those two things balanced, then the body will start to become more still. But also, because they're all interconnected, that I like to sometimes just practice kaya sthira. Let's get still. Don't move for 1 minute. And usually, not always, But usually that will start to have an effect in the level of breath. Somebody's body starts to get still. They're moving, they're fidgeting, and then you say, okay, just get still. Don't move for a minute. Usually the breath, the energetic body will start to become more quiet. Not always. So we definitely are looking at ways to address all three of those koshas. In your yoga classes, definitely Anumaya kosha, definitely Pranamaya kosha, and try to start tapping into Manomaya kosha. Yes?
Yeah, it just reminded me a question I had for my teacher in Lebanon, because I have this friend who's always fidgeting. So we had this long discussion about whether we should just let her stop with asana and more work on pranayama and a little bit of meditation so that she can come back to asana. And he was telling me, no, it's not a good idea because she has to start with asana.
Well, I don't know that I agree fully with that. You can teach your pranayama. So the question is that Nicole is saying that she has a friend in Lebanon who is always fidgeting. And so they're wondering, should they stop doing asana and work more on pranayama meditation? And the thing is that they're probably not ready for meditation. It's probably not, I don't know if they are or not. I don't know what their intention is. But you definitely want to work, one of the things that Karina and I are teaching you guys is vinyasa yoga. And this is the beauty of vinyasa yoga. This person, and I don't know them and I'm not trying to insult them, but what we would diagnose them is unsteady. They're not there's no steadiness. If they're constantly moving, if they're moving, their breath is moving, the mind is constantly moving. And so because the mind is moving, the breath is not balanced and the body is not balanced. So instead of going to your friend and saying, you need to work on your mind, what we can do is we can start to integrate pranayama and asana. How do we do that? Vinyasa yoga. What do we do in vinyasa? Inhale, bring the arms up. Exhale, bring the arms down. Inhale, bring the arms up. Exhale, twist, bring the arms down. Now, probably your friend or somebody that's imbalanced and has a busy mind. I was thinking about our friend that came here to teacher training. I did this a lot with him. Inhale the arms up, exhale. Now, what you'll notice about somebody imbalanced, inhale the arms up, exhale the arms down. You guys know what I'm talking about. Slow it down. Nicole, inhale, take the arms up to the count of 4. Exhale the arms down to the count of 4. Inhale, let's add pranayama. Inhale the arms up to the count of 4. Exhale the arms down to the count of 4. Hold the breath out now for 2 counts. 1, 2. Inhale the arms up. That's how you start to calm somebody down. You work with the more longana effects of pranayama to get them to become more embodied. And that is the gift of Krishnamacharya, is that he gave us these diverse ways to start integrating pranayama with asana. And depending on the kind of person that you're working with, then we start to adapt. Unfortunately, not all yoga teachers are taught in systems of adaptation. Most yoga teachers are taught, just do the posture, breathe, and that's it. What we're trying to do is now give you some extra tools so that you can start integrating, well, do we need to hold the breath at the top of the inhale? How long can we hold the breath? Do we need to, maybe we inhale to the count of 4 on the way up, but then we exhale to the count of 6 on the way down. And then hold the breath out for 2 counts. This all starts to create a certain energetic effect. Do you guys remember the word did Karina say Langana and Brahmana? What is Langana? Calming, and then Brahmana is expanding. Does the person need to calm? Do they need more Langana or do they need more Brahmana?